Hello, everyone, and welcome back to the Red Path. My name is Brian, and I'm joined by Josie. And today we are going to be talking about 11th edition, right? The
Finally.
finally 11th edition, right? This is something that I've been waiting for, and I'm very excited about. Everything they've shown off, I've been very excited about. There's some things that I don't like. There's some things that I'm very excited about. Broadly, I say that I'm happy to be escaping this current meta that we're in. I think Josie would agree that between Vitrix, Satan, and now the crabs, and a few other things sprinkled in there. Yarok has been pretty obscene. The twins, right? I'm just ready for something new and refreshing. Josie, how you doing?
I'm doing okay. Yeah, thinking about that meta stuff, I actually am kind of amazed that we've managed to get something worse than a Catan meta at the minute. And I know it's entirely down. Defilers are not as bad as Catan are, but Defilers are held by 5 of the armies in the game, and at least 4 of them are probably now the top 5 armies in the game. It's a big issue from a meta standpoint,
Yeah,
and it's really sad.
I mean, it's cool to see the crabs actually being good. I'd say from a world leader standpoint, we were
True.
definitely excited to get our crab, but our crab definitely loses the fight to the other 4 crabs, which is sad. But I'm still happy to have a functioning defiler. But
True.
today, we are going to be talking a bit about 11th edition and how we think world leaders will be applying themselves to everything that has been released by GW thus far. We've been waiting until we've kind of gotten a little bit of a bigger picture from GW, and I think tomorrow, as of filming this tomorrow, we're about to see the entire release box, which would be super cool. I'm not sure we're going to get anything from that, but I'm really excited to see what's in that box. I'm really excited to see how they plan to roll out the edition. As it stands, I think we're about a month or a month and a half away from pre-orders and going live with 11th, which will be excited. Both Josie and I are pursuing WTC. So that'll be rush time for us in particular to become masters of 11th edition, which will be ultimately beneficial to you guys because we have to learn this as fast as we physically can. And
Yes.
if world leaders are good, hopefully you'll see us with them there. But that being said, Josie and I are going to break down kind of all of the points of 11th edition that have been revealed to us or heavily rumored or heavily implied that we have like a concrete confirmation from GW on. I know there's probably some excess rumors out there, but everything's a rumor until it's actually told to us because I can't tell you how many times rumors have been wrong. But that being said, Josie, how are you feeling about 11th? Are you excited?
I'm really excited. I think it's going to be a really interesting time. What we're hearing so far is almost feeling like a rebalance more than a buff for either sort of melee side, shooting side. We've seen some really cool things about fight phase changes, and at the same time, the boards feel maybe like they're a little bit more interesting for shooting. I do like that there's more of a focus on getting armies into the midboard. I mean, as a World Eaters player, that the midboard is where I want to be in general, and that's where the most interesting parts of 40k happen as well. It's the nitty
Yeah.
gritty side of it. So I'm really excited they're doing that. I like the looks of the new terrain sets they're doing. I like the GW terrain is getting more pieces. This is really good. Um, I remain to be convinced by the maps, but we've only seen a couple of them so far, and we've only seen a couple of missions so far. I don't think either of them particularly killy missions. So seeing how that sort of really comes out in the wash is going to be an interesting thing to look out for.
Yeah, and obviously on 11th launch, they're not going to get everything right. I can't, as far as I can remember, if every horror story everybody's said ever told me about the launch of ninth, launch of 10th, launch of 8th, there's usually almost something that just doesn't click, and that's okay, right? That's just, I'd rather have a little bit more change and dynamism, and it seems like GW, as Josie pointed out, is really focused on making games more interactive and giving chances to some parts of your armies, which we're going to talk about a little bit that maybe don't really see that much play. And there's a little bit more emphasis on how they can apply that. And kind of like this is going to be a little bit wish listing from Josie and I for how we hope they can like take that torch and run with it. So Starting off, I was actually at the Adepticon reveals. It was a really fun tournament. Obviously, you guys followed my journey all the way through Adepticon, but going to the reveal show at the beginning was really cool. We got to hear that or see that show live in person, and one of the big things that they talked about right out the gate was that we were going to get a multi-detachment system, which was something that was like previously missed in ninth. I know a lot of our viewers here started playing the game in 10th. Actually, about half of you did. The channel has almost doubled in size since ninth to 10th. But in ninth edition, you used to be able to take multiple detachments in your army. Now, that could be multiple detachments within the same army, which wouldn't actually give you extra rules. That would just be like, this is a way to force org yourself into bringing more of a skew list. Um, but additionally, something specifically like Chaos players had access to, and if you're bringing in Knights or Imperial agents, you could ally in a demon detachment to World Leaders, and it would pull in all of the stratagems from that detachment and all the enhancements from that detachment. Now, unfortunately, that had the effect of having 20 to 30 like strats to have to keep track of. Just a little bit of a disaster, but it was really cool, right? You could have Khorne demons alongside Berserker Warband and have both of their rules and still have it kind of interact because Blood Tithe didn't care. And it wasn't anti-synergistic. Now, currently in 10th edition, almost every form of allying is anti-synergistic. Even within the demon detachments that exist currently within the armies, they're still kind of like fighting against the grain of like what the army's trying to do. Like an Emperor's Children, like the Slaanesh demons don't get any of the rules in the Codex. Same thing with World Leaders. You got to work towards getting the rules. I think Thousand Sons got FAQ'd so it works, so that's kind of cool. But like, I wish we all could have access to our rules, right? And that's what we want. Um, so this detachment system that they've brainstormed is that you are going to have 3 points to build an army of detachment points. Um, I'm imagining, and they stated that they don't want any army to have access to 12 strats at any given point in time, meaning that's kind of a hint that we're going to be getting maybe some mini detachments. I'm not really sure. I'm curious how they're actually going to implement that. But you're going to be able to mix and match detachments. This is super cool competitively because for the writing on the wall, we all know that Gladius is probably going to be 3 points. I think they said that in the interview or
I think
reveal
they
show.
did, yeah,
I
yeah.
think they did. They said Gladius will be 3 points, right? So any of like the meta armies and meta detachments, which you can almost safely assume the Berserker Warband might be 3 points. It's going to be, in my opinion, probably okay because we have Gortrek and we have Khorne Demon can ride on the sidelines. Maybe those attachments can have access to a little bit of help. And that's probably how you'll see it. It's just getting 3 extra strats or maybe 4 extra strats or however they decide to size these and a little bit of rule support that something like Warband or Gladius wouldn't get access to, which will be super interesting for like spicing up your armies. So, Josie, thoughts on what do you think about the detachment system?
I think it is. I think it's there's pros and cons to it. I think it's going to do an awful lot. I, I think I agree. What we're expecting to see is probably the detachments that are most played get to be 3 points. Probably most of the ones that currently exist, apart from those, would be 2 points. And then we're looking at some spice, a bit of support from the new detachments or whatever comes out. That is potentially a bit smaller in scale, but will still buff some stuff. Um, I think it's going to do an awful lot to buff up those B tier detachments that we've got, like your Gore tracks, like your Demonkins. I think it's going to elevate them really well, and it's going to allow them probably to compete a lot more reliably with the likes of Warband in people's minds. I mean, for me, Gore track's already almost there, so it really does only take a little bit of something extra to push it right into viability in that A tier. What I do worry about is that maybe they've left themselves a little bit thin. I don't want them to go too far. We're not talking about like in the future there's going to be 10 points and Warband's going to cost 7 or something. But if say Warband's a 3 pointer and say Gore Track is a 2 pointer, but at the same time Possessed Slaughter is also a 2 pointer, it's going to do nothing really to elevate those bad detachments up to the level that we want them to be. And I hope that they're not sort of forgotten this edition in the rush to balance out some of the medium detachments up to the top.
Yeah,
But in general, it's really exciting. We get to see a lot more variety. It's going to make, I mean, for me personally, with WTC coming, it's going to mean we are on an absolutely wild train. This isn't like an index edition where there's 25 armies to choose from. There are going to be hundreds of builds that are going to be potentially viable, and nobody's going to get it right. And it's going to be an absolute show, and it's going to be so much fun.
Yeah, and like I think they stated also in the reveal show that we're going to be getting 70 new detachments on launch, which sounds like a lot, but I'd guess that almost every single one of those detachments is going to be a one pointer, where they're going to specifically design detachments to be able to work with your existing B tier, if you want to call it B tier detachments, to put them on par with stuff like Gladius and Warband and give a little bit of diversity and be able to mix and match. Like that's also something that really interests me is that you could have Khorne Demonkin or Cult of Blood even be 2 points, and you're like, what would you like to slide this detachment into help or this one into help or this one into help? And it could skew your lists into really cool builds. And like I think it was also rumored that we're getting a Demon Engine detachment. And like that'd be super sick, right? Where you get to have demon engines getting extra rules inside of Cult of Blood, where you have like a Khorne Lord of Skulls that's already getting worshipped by the cultists that has more rules on top of it. Hell yeah, that could potentially push something like Warband to the side, and that's honestly what people need. Now, that's specifically within the context of World Leaders. Obviously, for the whole game, as Josie was saying, it's going to be the Wild West. We are a small codex. We are probably still going to have a relatively limited number of choices as a consequence of being a small codex, but it just is what it is. A codex like Space Marines, which already has 20 detachments, which is probably going to get 10 new one pointers. I you could walk up to the table and you could see a combination of an army you've never seen before, and that might be the entire experience for the whole edition, which is sick,
Yeah,
but it won't be balanced initially. I promise you, out the gate, it is not going to be balanced. There's going to be something pretty fucked up, and and they're going to take it and run with it. But if anybody remembers Wraith Knights at the beginning of 10th, I wouldn't be surprised if something like that reared its head again.
I'm going to politely hope that nothing that bad arrives. And I'm going to believe that nothing that bad is going to happen. I
Yeah.
don't think we're going to see any army past 80% win rate in the first month of 11th. That's my. I'm putting it out there now. Nobody past 80%.
Okay. I love that for you. Yeah, certainly they're not going to get the balance right out the gate, but like I said, if everybody has the chance to be a little powerful and have some powerful combos, that's better than three-quarters of us sitting there and watching a Satan do backflips in the middle of the table, or in this case, in this new meta, Defilers in Satan, right? So,
Absolutely.
there's that concept. There was also something they mentioned, which I think has pretty good implications for us, is that they're going to rewrite most data sheets. And they mentioned this in the reveal show, so that leaders always lead, even when they're solo. Um, Something like Karn. His whole squad dies, he stands back up, he still has reroll one state and wound. That's
Yes.
actually going to make him quite a bit stronger. Like,
It's huge.
that's a huge change for stuff like Karn. Solo Invocatus, I think that he allows him to like fly over units. So he basically has the fly keyword now. I'm curious how they're going to implement that. But Invocatus basically gains fly. And I think he has go through walls too. Does it go through walls and fly? And then he has
Yeah, and
impact portals.
it
Like,
is a wild leading effect. Yeah, so he'll get
so,
it all the time.
so that's pretty cool. That might actually be enough to push him over the edge of being a solo piece that we're interested in using. Um, I'm thinking of the other characters that we might use. Lord on Juggernaut probably doesn't care. And then Mo, probably you're not running a Mo solo. But for Karn and Invo, the implications are pretty big for that.
Yeah, so I think what they've said is they're going to split characters into two types. So there are characters, obviously, that you would never expect to lead a unit. Your Angrons are never going to lead a unit, for example. So there's going to be they're splitting it into support characters who always have to lead a unit. So if for example, Invocatus is a support character, you could never run him solo, which is a bit of a worry. Hopefully, he won't be. I can imagine him. He doesn't feel like a support kind of character.
No.
And it's those support characters who keep their when leading effects all the time. And then there are going to be leaders, which is a really frustrating way to describe it because they're not getting their when leading effects all the time. Um, they do not have to join a unit. We think that they'll be able to in a lot of cases. So I think you'll get a lot of ones, possibly like Khan, but I'm thinking like Lucius for Emperor's Children, who very explicitly is designed to be able to join units and not join units and kind of work with
Hmm.
both ways. There will be those characters who don't have to join, but I think a lot of our infantry characters are going to end up coming under this support banner, which might see an end to stuff like solo invocatus. It might see an end to, I think, solo slaughterbounds are very unlikely to be a thing. Yeah,
That one's got my eyebrow raised a little bit because it's like for something like orcs or space marines, right? It's very clearly and very easy to define what is a support and what is a leader for them. But for us, that could actually frighteningly narrow a little bit of our play. Like I said, I'm curious how Invocatus is going to work with those keywords. We don't know. No, we don't know that. We don't see into the future. I could see that being a problem that they have to wrap their head around. They've also addressed that several things in the game are going to get FAQ'd on launch, so it's compatible with 11th edition. So if there's really weird rules combos like the invo while leading, go through walls, and basically gaining the fly keyword, that may just get changed to something else. Let's see. I'm trying to think of any more like of the Adepticon level reveals. But I think that wraps up. I've been there is a few more things that they talked about. The fights first change. It's pretty huge.
oh, it's massive.
Considering we lost our best fights first boy, Glaive Mo with fights first from Index. We lost him for the last year and a half, but that's okay. Don't feel bad. Fights for Fulgrim is now like the worst model in 40K. That was the only thing he had going for him. He already didn't have much going for him. Now he has nothing going for him. Fights First is changing back to the way it was in ninth edition, where basically whoever the active player is always gets to determine the first fight, which is kind of how it is now, except in the Fights First phase, the inactive player gets to determine the first fight, and then you go back to alternating. And then once you go to non-fights, then it would start with the active player, and you start alternating. Sorry, inactive player, then you start alternating. No, yeah. Inactive player starts alternating. So with the changes, they're going to make it so that the active player always starts the decision making, meaning that you can charge Lionel Johnson with Khorne and 10 and you will kill him. Now you are terrified of charging Lionel Johnson or even getting heroicked by him. Now you don't have to worry about either. You will get to freely charge into things like Fulgrim. It's not a problem at all. He can't even hurt you, and he didn't even really hurt you before. That's something that we don't have to worry about, which is nice when trying to navigate the fights phase. That was one of the biggest questions we always had is how do we deal with Lionel Johnson standing in the middle of the table as a world leader player? You kind of just had to figure it out or like bite down and charge him with multiple units and pop -1 damage and pray that's enough. So that change is big. Additionally, we have the transport change. I know you're excited for that one, Josie, right?
Yeah, I'm. I think we've not seen too much about how it works exactly yet, but I mean, just being able to get. I mean, I know World Eater's Rhino already has the ability to get up before we're charged, but you don't always want to. You very often don't want to. It leaves you open to getting shot, stuff like that. So being able to get out of a Rhino when it's charged is going to be a massive thing for us. There is a chance we've not heard the exact details on it yet. It might make you battle shocked. You might take some damage on the way out. But I mean, if your Rhino is going to be destroyed anyway, if you were going to get battle shocked and take damage on the way out anyway, why not you choose where you're going to end up?
Yeah, and I think that's actually targeting is like they don't want you getting like wrapped by 10 guardsmen. Maybe there's a way that they just honestly that was a pretty toxic way to I always felt bad explaining to your opponent that no, you can't desperate escape intentionally. You're stuck in that rhino. I always felt pretty bad.
It's horrible.
The amount of times I've pile and consolidated cons sixed, like wiped a screen, consolidated six, and wrapped a rep X or something, and been like, those Vegix are actually stuck in there. Sorry, right? And then I just sit there and groan, and that it's a game loss, right? Now that's a little kind of a non-bow for us because we do have the if somebody gets within 9, you can disembark on the World Leaders Rhinos, which is like the main reason I ever used that was because somebody was getting a little too close with 10 guardsmen, and I really didn't want to get wrapped. Was usually why I use that. I mean, occasionally it would be for heroic plays, but that's kind of like in that gotcha territory of like your opponent probably wouldn't have moved over there if they knew you were just going to get out in heroic. So I rarely use that. But um, yeah, you can also just use your Rhino as a battering ram now. You just
Yeah.
move it up the table and charge something. You don't want to waste advance and charge on that Berserker squad. You could just charge them with the Rhino and get out. And maybe you count as I'm assuming you count as fights first when you get out and charge. Maybe you don't. Maybe that's how they balance it. I'm not sure. But regardless, it's a cool mechanic. And while we're just talking about like our broad mechanical changes, there's a few more in there. Plunging fire is changing, which is if you squint, just a strict upgrade to like knights a little bit. They reworked plunging fire to be that if you were on a second floor period, there's no measurement to it, I believe is what they said. You get +1 to your ballistic skill rather than +1 to your AP. Now, +1 AP was toxic as hell, especially when we were talking about Desolation Marines from the backfield on a WTC board where they're just up there indirecting you with ignore cover +1 AP. That was really frustrating. Now it is just +1 to hit. Cool, sick. Yeah, you have to be shooting up. Was it be shooting up 3 inches, which is basically just be on top of something.
Yeah, if you're 3 inches up and you're targeting units that are specifically on the ground level, so if you put some models up on the first floor, you set. I mean, it's good. There might be a bit more interaction with levels of ruins. If your models are more able to get up on ruins yourself to counter plunging fire potentially, I still think it's going to come up very rarely. But I think it's always going to be less of a feels bad when someone's +1 ballistic skill,
Yeah.
especially with stuff like indirect. If they keep the indirect penalty, so you only hit on fours, that +1 ballistic skill is going to do absolutely nothing. Plunging fire is going to do absolutely nothing for a lot of the most toxic abusers of it in the game right now, and that's
Yep.
a big
I
help.
mean, and that, yeah, and like we obviously are not benefiting from plunging fire at all. It's not something like you're not going to be wanting to be +1 to hit on your bolt pistols, guys. So don't even think about it. Because we're going to be talking about the next big rule that's changing is the hidden keyword, which is probably the biggest implication for world leaders as an army in terms of core rule changes. Barring the fight's first change, I'd say that this is the one that's going to come up the most. That's going to be helping us. Hidden as a new mechanic that's getting introduced. If you're an infantry unit and your model is wholly inside of a building, I think it's more than just infantry. I think it's just like all basically non-vehicle, non-monster.
Yeah, it's infantry
Um,
beasts and swarms.
if you have not shot a gun for the entire game, you have loan up 15. Big ask of us, I know. Just don't forget and accidentally shoot your bolt pistol because you're impatient, right? That's huge, right? And after comparing this to the deployment zones that we've been seeing on some of these missions, it seems like GW is very intent on making sure that models aren't just dying turn one because you did not go first, right? You can deploy models in terrain. You can put spawn in terrain even because your expansion objective could just be completely open. But you could be like, hey, if you want to shoot these spawn from with your tank across the table, they're on up 15. Sick. Like that might be
Absolutely.
enough to actually deter your opponent from getting like, and you can use that if your opponent wants to get within 15 of that spawn to shoot it. That means there's
And
probably
then
a
within
rhino.
15,
That means a rhino's behind that wall with an advanced and charging berserker squad that's going to come get you, right? So, I think people are overreacting a little bit for the strength of this. Like it's going to come up, but in a lot of situations, the loan up 15, like 15 is still quite a large distance, right? Like it's huge, don't get me wrong, but this isn't Dawn of the Unshootable Melee Armies, right? This is not what that is. But it is forcing you to be interactive with your opponent in the middle of the table, which is what world leaders love, right?
absolutely.
As
And
Josie was saying.
the maps we've seen so far seem like they've got an awful lot of terrain that is on the deployment zone line as well. So you'll be able to like push up really far in your deployment and get that loan up. And it means there's going to be a lot of armies that you can almost pre-measure in deployment. I'm like, okay, how fast do your units go? If we're 24 inches apart and your models move less than 9, I can deploy on the line. Doesn't matter where I am as long as it's in a ruin. I will deploy on the line. And that's something world eaters haven't been able to do. It's depended a lot on the maps, on where terrain is, and on most maps that exist right now, there isn't terrain that has you directly on your own deployment zone line and completely hidden. This is a big deal for us in exactly deployment and maybe turn one, and then it kind of stops to be a big deal for most armies.
Yeah, and it will be a big deal. And a lot of the tables and that they've shown off for 11th, like, and I'll throw a picture up here when I'm doing the editing. But your deployment zones are pretty safe. There's a lot of places where you can stage like semi-aggressively, but not completely aggressively. Not like you're going to charge your opponent turn one. And same thing with your opponent. They can put a tank kind of like closer to the middle of the table, not really within charge range. If you move out and go touch a vehicle, they will be able to come up and shoot you. But they are coming towards you to shoot you, which is again the key here. And then the last big like base mechanical change that we're going to talk about that isn't related to the charge or fight phase is the one strat per phase per unit. This is massive for what it means in the game. And this is specifically massive for us. There's not very many instances in the World Leader Codex where we are spamming strats on one unit, right? We're never going like boom, boom, two strats, right? That's not really happening. Conveniently, Berserker Warband has the worst advance in charge in the game, which is you do it in your movement phase before you see the advance roll, which is kind of sucky, but it's in the movement phase. A lot of the other advance and charges are in the charge phase, right? Where it's like in your charge phase, like I can say in Renegade Raiders, I believe that one's a charge phase one. You point at a unit, say it's the charge phase now. I would like to use advanced charge. You fail that charge, you cannot CP reroll that charge. We can
Nope.
CP reroll our advanced charge. So feels good. And then we also have like our +1 AP. Gore Track has all of its shenanigans stuff, which is mostly in your opponent's phase or end of the fight phase. Get back in your car. I really don't think there's that much strat overlap in Gore Track where you'd be in an instance where you double strat. Is that correct?
Absolutely. I mean, most of the times when you'd even consider double stratting, I think they've been explicitly ruled out. So you're already not allowed to, for example, reactive move a rhino to somebody and then blood surge out of it. Those two strats aren't allowed to be used in the same phase
Well,
already.
well,
So the combos have
there
already
you go.
been knocked out of the game. Yeah.
Yeah, well, there you go, right? And like, I think this is just a straight buff to us. And at the end of the day, what this is hitting is Space Marines going AOC -1 to wound and Ultramarines. It's really frustrating to deal with.
Yep.
Uh, I've seen the cursed AOC smoke -1 to wound. Like, granted, if they're smoking you, it's just to be malicious. Uh, but this is something that's going to hit way more armies than just us. To the degrees at which it hits other armies is quite huge. It stops a bunch of Death Starring, where you have one unit just spend 5 CP and walk through your whole army. There's not that much of that in the game right now, but there certainly is a lot of double strats in the game. And they pay a CP, give themselves crit fives, and pay another CP and give themselves full rerolls to hit. Like there's a few like combos like that out there, which it's not really going to be a thing anymore. It's nice, doesn't really affect us that much. It will come up. You will find yourselves in situations where you want to CP reroll a save in the fight phase, but you already used +1 AP on that unit or something, right? It will come up. It will, you will feel it, but other armies will feel it more. That's kind of my take on that one.
I think so. I think so. The only other thing that we missed in terms of the big changes is cover. And I think that's going to be something that potentially hurts a lot of our builds. We are a ballistic skill 4 army at the end of the day. For anyone who's not aware of it, cover is changing. It no longer gives people within cover +1 to save, or people affected by cover +1 to save. Instead, the thing that is shooting at you is -1 to its ballistic skill. The fact that it's a ballistic skill modifier also means that it can stack with hit mods. We don't know if stealth's going to work the same, but if it does, for example, stealth would make you -2 to hit if you're in cover. There are models like the Tyrannid Venom Thrope guys that put out an aura of being -1 to hit. These will all stack with cover, and those units being -2 to hit is a huge deal. But cover in general, as a -1 to hit effect, is worse for armies that hit on 4s. Your shooting becomes more significantly worse than armies that hit on 2s or 3s. That's just sort of the way the maths works on it. And it is going to really hurt a lot of our attempts at building more shooting heavy lists, because just in general, hitting on 5s is never someone you want to be. We've all shot tanks at other tanks that have smoked and just missed every single shot. It will happen extremely regularly now.
Now
Even
you should
Forge
be,
Fiends,
you're an orc now. You should be excited when you hit somebody.
yeah, exactly. Even Forge Fiends going from like hitting on 5s full rerolls makes it marginally better than hitting on 4s without any rerolls to begin with. It's a big hit to our efficiency in shooting, and will obviously push us towards melee, which fortunately seems like we'll be able to do fairly reliably.
Yes. Yes. Everything else we've discussed is helping melee engage.
Yeah.
But next we're going to talk kind of a little bit about the missions and maps. Objective markers are gone, circles are gone. We have rectangles now. All hail our rectangle overlords.
So much more
Honestly,
immersive.
I don't really care. It's the same thing. If you squint, you're going to be able to hide on objectives and not be able to be seen. Because if you have a small enough unit like Chaos Spawn tucked behind a little bit of an L rune on one of these big squares, you should be able to hide and not be able to be seen. One of the things that I've seen a lot with, and I'm curious how they want to implement it, is a lot of the squares, they'll have an L in the corner. It looks like you can probably hold the objective from behind the wall on the L, which will make it really hard to actually get across the table and into your opponent and actually be able to get them off of it. So there's going to be a little bit more emphasis, and I think on armies that move fast, that hit fast, or move fast and shoot fast. Because it's going to be really hard to get your opponent off the back of those squares. If that works the way that has been shown, which it sounds like if you're just towing the footprint, you're putting OC on the footprint, but you can tow the footprint from behind a wall on the back side of the rune and not be able to be seen, which would be good for us, right? You can put some jackals on the back side of a rune. It'd be really hard for your opponent to come out and actually interact with that. But on the flip side, that means we have to have units staged aggressively to be able to attack your opponent's expansion because you're going to be able to need to cross distances of 15, 20 inches regularly. So spawn stonks up, Gortrek and Warband stonks up, right? You need your advance and charge. You definitely be able to move around a disembark and charge, right? All of those things will help you cover that distance. Um, Also with the layouts, like we've already talked about the dispositions, um, it sounds like the layouts will kind of be determined by the TO, is how they worded it, but every table will be playing a different layout. And those layouts will be determined by the matchup of the two armies. Now, there's a lot to unpack here. We're going to have to just see the core rulebook with how they're going to physically implement this. But from what they've said, every table will be playing a different game of 40K, just about, which will be a little complex to keep up with. I think if there's one part of the 11th edition that makes me a little bit nervous, I'll be honest, it's this part, but I'm not gonna complain about it till I try it.
Yeah, I mean, we'll just have to see how it works. I think people have sort of run the numbers on it with five different dispositions that you can choose from. That means there's going to be 15 combos of missions essentially. So there are 15 different missions available. Within that, we're expecting to see sort of three map possibilities for each mission, which means GW has had to make 45 different maps for competitive play, which is a tall order.
Yeah, my guess too is the maps are going to be fairly similar. And they said that they were going to, in the reveal show, that they were going to actively support the team's format more, which is both a good and a bad thing. Because, like, it's kind of great the way it is. If they're going to
It is
touch
pretty
it,
cool.
let's not break it. But my guess would be is there's going to be a tournament companion. Like, this is just my guess. I'm actually just going out on a limb here. There's going to be a tournament companion, and they're going to come out and say, this is the matchup that Monk Ka and Berserker Warband should be playing on. These are the missions you're going to be playing, and this is the layout you're going to be playing that's been balanced for Monk Ka versus Warband or that style, right? And then there's going to be three different maps you can choose from. The TO will have the power to choose, but I have a feeling that one of them is going to be a balanced map in one direction, and then you're going to have an attacker and defender map the other way around for teams. So that if you defend, you get to choose between the three, and there's probably going to be one that favors a melee centric versus Tau, right? But there might be a Tau one that favors Tau versus melee, right? That'd kind of be like my thought process for how they do that. I'm not really sure. I don't know what they're going to do. We're going to have to see. I could poke a million holes in this right now and say, well, what about this? What about this? What about this? Because I don't like this or I don't like this. Well, we're gonna have to just see it implemented, which again should be coming out like almost pretty soon. So I'm gonna hold my judgment until then.
Yeah, it's too soon to tell. The terrain layout changing is an interesting one. Again, some maths nerds have ran the numbers on this. There is slightly less terrain on the board for a GW map than there was previously, but I think we've seen in the maps that have been released so far that all the terrain on the board, or most of the terrain on the board, is in a lot more useful places, and there's more of them. So the fact that there's less terrain on the board doesn't mean anything about how many lines of sight are being blocked, which is more really how we play 40k. It doesn't matter if a giant square is there, if a small rectangle blocks just as many lines, which is mainly what we're looking for.
Yeah, and
Um,
like on that, right? Broadly, the way that you can look at 11th edition so far, as I've been describing it to people, is from what they've shown, right? It's been World War I trenches. You
yeah,
are safe in your trench, and your opponent is safe in their trench. But as soon as somebody blows the whistle and you have to go over the top, right, it's fairly open to interactive, right? Your opponent can come out and interact with you with guns. And at the same time, you will have to run at your opponent through open terrain to charge them. But I will take that all day over being shot in my deployment zone to my death, like to death, right? Like I want to deploy safely, and I don't want to die because I didn't go first. And I also don't want to get punished for going first, right? And if that's the direction they're going to take it, I'm happy with it. I'm excited about it. Who cares about the circles, rectangles forever? I rest in peace to. I have so many of these faction objective markers that I bought. Sad to see them go.
yeah,
I could actually see in a later tournament companion they bring them back. I'm not gonna lie, I'm a little cynical about that. I could see them coming back because the rectangles just don't work or something. But again, we'll have to see what it is before we actually judge it.
Yeah, we'll definitely see. And I would like to give some quick, massive props to GW as well. What they're doing with terrain, in terms of they've standardized it, which is really cool, and they've released the dimensions, which is amazing for competitive 40k. If GW wants to get everybody on the planet playing on their boards, the first step to doing it is making sure that everybody knows exactly what the terrain is meant to look like. And the fact that they've put it out in advance means that actually most of the events, especially the big ones, that are looking to transition to 11th quickly will probably, even by now, have their terrain bases ready to go. And certainly by the
Yep.
time 11th drops, they'll be ready to get straight into it. And it's going to feel really seamless compared to other editions that have been a lot more difficult in terms of getting the competitive terrain set up.
Yep. Now on to the part of the game that you're here to listen to, hear us talk about, right? The charge phase and the fight phase, right? And I think a lot of the terrain changes and a lot of the mechanical changes have built up to one core problem that Games Workshop has just refused to solve for the entirety of 10th edition, and that is Inch from the Wall. Inch from the Wall is gone. It's dead, and it can stay dead. Uninteractive 40K was my least favorite way to. I mean, we advertise passive aggressive Warhammer, which is kind of uninteractive, but I'd squint and say that doesn't really count. But inch from the wall gameplay was kind of toxic to play around. Um, Essentially, they've made engagement range 2 inches, right? And I think that's their attempt to get rid of base to base to get into combat as well. I think the engagement range 2 inches is just going to encapsulate that. Maybe the base to base is still there, but broadly, what that's tackling is you can punch through a wall. You cannot get base block because maybe spawn. Spawn can you could probably 2 inch from the wall spawn or something, right? But whatever. I'll take it, right? Uh, but as far as inch from the wall is, it's gone. Engagement range has gone up to 2 inches. Now to counteract that, because I don't want everybody's charges to just get an inch easier, is they made everybody's charges an inch harder. And in fact, engagement range is not related to your charge roll at all anymore. Um,
I'm going to
we
spend
are,
6 weeks teaching people. Oh, 6 weeks is optimistic. We're going to spend the entire edition teaching people about this, I think.
yep, charges are now base to base, where essentially what that means is if you looked at charges now, if you pulled your tape measure out and you're 7.6 inches away from your opponent, you pretty much always round down, and that is the charge number that you need because you only need to get within engagement range within an inch. So if you're 7.6 away, you'd need to roll a 7 to get into base to base or to get into engagement range contact for charges in 10th. 11th, they only care about qualifying to be in engagement range. To qualify to move to be in engagement range, you have to roll a charge that gets you base to base. So if you're 7.6 away, you need an 8. If you're 7.1 away, you need an 8, right? Essentially, what that means is every charge in the game, as is, just got an inch longer, if you want to think about it like that, which is a little brutal, but there's some light at the end of the tunnel for this one. The not only are we fast, so we don't care, I mean we care a little bit, but charges now no longer we've gone to AOS charges, which I've played a little bit of AOS, and I tell you it's actually kind of nice, where you roll the dice. You see what the value is, and you go wherever you want. You declare your charge targets after you roll your dice. This is going to be wacky. This is going to lead to some blowouts. People are not going to expect the box cars that's going to come out of your hand and get them to lose their home deployment zone or whatever, right? What this is most likely going to be, though, and 95% of the times you roll a charge, is if you have two choices to charge, you have a very juicy target and then you have a meh target. At least you get to kill the meh target, right? Um, which is huge, right? And I,
Yeah.
I, I actually like it. It has some implications that are going to be frustrating. I think it's much less frustrating than potentially because you're still able to make Snake Eyes and fail that charge, which Snake Eyes charges are now failable. They used to be
It's an
unfailable.
auto fail now. It's great.
It is just an
It's a
auto fail
crit
now.
fail.
Crit fail, right? Um, that's gonna make the Snake Eyes way more brutal. Uh, but it's going to prevent you from being in a feels bad where you're like, well, I wanted to kill that, but I needed a 6 and I only rolled a 5, but at least I can kill that over there, right? So that gets rid of that feels bad a little bit. The other feels bads are still there. You can still roll Snake Eyes and not make a charge. Conversely, your opponent could 6-inch deep strike you with Death Shroud Terminators that roll a 12 and go on Bilbo Baggins' unexpected journey and go straight into your deployment zone and not even go into what they were planning on charging, right? There's a long breadth of implications for this. And to see how we can actively take advantage of this compared with, in combination with a couple of the other rules that we're going to talk about in a second, We, as in the Red Path, are going to take our time to do our homework to figure out the best way to teach you how to re-slingshot in 11th edition. It's still definitely a possibility, but the 2d6 charge roll change, I think broadly will be a buff for melee armies because it'll give you the opportunity to get lucky. Is essentially what it is you roll that nine that you would never have gone for, but you rolled the nine, so you just get the upside of the nine, but with the downside of killing the five, is going to be pretty big. And then with that, Josie, you want to take away pylons and consolidates?
Yeah, so they've changed essentially the fight phase into three steps. So previously, when you pick a unit to fight, you go through the three steps with that unit of pile in, fight, consolidate. Now instead, it's a almost a mini phase within the fight phase. So at the start of the fight phase, you will have the pile in step, where every unit in your army will pile in essentially at once. I assume still one by one, but all at the same time within that step. And your opponent will be doing the same thing. They'll be piling at the same time. You will then go through your normal fight step. Fight first goes first, and then you go down the line from there. And then once all of the fights are done, you will then all consolidate at once as well. It's a really big change for combat. It will lead, I think, to some really interesting situations depending on who gets to pile in first in which situations, because different pylons can really mess up certain things. And that order is going to be really interesting when the rules come out officially. But it essentially means that you are guaranteed, you know, at the point that you are fighting, who gets to fight. It'll do away with an awful lot of those random situations of, oh, well, if I pile in slightly different here, it's going to speed up piling in
Yeah.
enormously, I think. And honestly,
And,
piling cheese is one of those things that really slows down combat armies.
and then they also got rid of the obligation to base, I believe, and they changed it to the obligation to enter engagement range, which is
Yes.
a key but notable difference that basically means that I'm guessing you can engagement range block yourself, but that widens the range of preventing like feels bad heroics, right? Where you get punished for a boxcars, or you can just jam a bunch of models to be within 2 inches. Like, say you're charging a war dog, right? Because engagement range is 2 inches, rather than having to wrap around the entire model with your 10-man Zerg squad. Now you can like double rank it from one side and prevent yourself from getting heroic on the other side by something scary, right? Now, will rolling hot still kind of screw you over sometimes? Probably. You're still going to be forced to enter engagement range, but much less. It was actually shocking how many times you could roll well in 10th edition, and that was a bad thing. Like, there's been so many times where I've rolled the 11. Like, I'd need like a 5-inch charge. I roll the 11. I'm like, oh shit, I'm about to get heroic by Lucius, right? That I wasn't expecting to. And I was like, let me CP reroll my successful charge real quick, right? So hopefully that helps that a little bit. There's a lot of times you'll see me intentionally on stream like mess my charges up so I can like take a model, string a model back, string a model back because I don't want to be forced to base. So that's gone, hopefully. That was really annoying to deal with. But broadly speaking, pile and consolidates being basically mini phases will speed up the pace of the game, which will make up for the extra 10 minutes you're going to spend setting up the terrain. Um, and then additionally, something that I was really concerned about, like I was like
Yes.
almost dooming about it, and I was staying very silent about it because it is very easy to snapshot parts of 11th edition and Doom. And one of the things that I was dooming about was our ability to not cascade things. Cascading is when you charge one thing with two things, you kill that thing, and you use pile in six, and you go kill another thing, right? It sounds like Overrun as their mechanic to replace that, because it was first when they said everything piles in and everything consolidates at the same time. My first fear was, oh, well, orcs are just going to put 6 trucks in the middle of the table and we lose the game instantly, right? That was basically how I saw that. Overrun basically treats it how it works now, where if two things with the fights first keyword, I believe is how they worded it, which is interesting because maybe some things like Fulgrim or Lucius do get to overrun you even though they're already in combat with you. I believe it keyed off the fights first keyword.
I think they've then clarified, maybe Warcom got the wrong information. They have then clarified it just to make it a lot easier. It just says that if a unit was eligible to fight at the start of the fight step, which does include units that have been stuck in combat with fight
Okay,
normal, that
cool.
previously would often get stuck never fighting because you'd free it up your first combat and then they just wouldn't get to do anything.
Yep. So now you can double charge a transport. your opponent will disembark, and then you'll get to pile in and fight them. Which, if you go back to the combat, Brian's top three combat tricks video that we put out a while ago, I showed you how to intentionally allow your opponent space to disembark so they wouldn't emergency disembark, so you then get to pile into them and fight them. Now, you don't really have to worry about that as much because now you can like kind of freely wrap the transport and kind of predict where your opponent's going to get out. And then with pile in six, it'd actually be pretty easy to get into them. Um, but Overrun basically preserves the fight phase as it is now without rolling back. Like they want everybody to pile in at once. It's going to speed the game up, but they didn't want to remove the advantages of multi-charging stuff, which is really nice to see. Like I was a little doomer about that. I wasn't really talking about it, but it's nice to see that they actually changed that. Now the interesting thing is Overrun does say make an additional pile-in move. I'd be curious to see if that means they're allowing us to move a one Berserker model 18 inches in the fight phase, which would be a little funny and messed up. But maybe there's an FAQ or errata for that. I don't know. But at the moment in time, maybe you can move a Berserker 18 inches.
And it would be so funny.
Yeah, like pile in, consolidate would be funny, right? You advance and charge your Berserkers out the Rhino 17 inches, make a boxcar charge, move 29, and move an extra 18 inches. Yeah, there you go. You just moved 37 inches in one turn. So, right, is that math? Is that math?
I think it's
17,
47. I think
47. I think I was off
you're
by 10. I
10
was like, I
short.
definitely, I definitely have a post-work brain. But you can move an insane distance in one turn. Granted, piling consolidates, like you're not going to ever be using the full 18. It'll probably be for just getting the extra couple inches on the second pile-in. But that is Overrun covered. One more thing to cover. I believe they mentioned that engagement range is you can move through engagement range, which is huge. You just can't end in engagement range.
Oh, it's
Um,
massive. I mean, if anybody was around, I think it was at some point during 8th, it might even have been 9th edition, when they tried to get around 1 inch wall block and they just made all engagement ranges 2 inches if you were in a piece of terrain. That was one of the worst 2 weeks that competitive 40k had. I'm glad that they've come back to it and tried to work out a way to set this 2 inch engagement in a way that works. And it really seems like they've learned the lesson from that. But yeah, that rule lasted about 2 weeks before it was emergency FAQ'd again. It was a nightmare.
yeah, and now that you can move through engagement range, you basically can like lean in and look at your opponent's models and be like, that looks like a Karn-sized base can fit through there. Single file, boys. You roll your advance and you can smooth go right through that, right? And it seems like between the disembark and fight, um, and some of the other rules that they've been showing, like they're really trying to cut down on toxic, uninteractive gameplay here, right? Between the lone op 15, the plunging fire change, moving through engagement range, it's a lot harder to get jailed. Still is possible. Your opponent just has to pre-measure the back of your base plus 2 inches to the back of their base. They can still keep you from going through them. If they squeeze themselves a little bit, they can keep your bases from sliding through them. But makes it much harder for them to do, which gives us more options. That's probably going to end up doing is making units a lot more dense. If they want to actually move block you, they're going to have to put multiple units in front of you, which means you get to kill multiple things. And that's not a bad thing. That's a great thing for us.
Yep.
But a lot of talking there, Josie. I think we've pretty much covered all the charge phase, fight phase stuff that we know now. I am broadly excited for it. I would say all inches getting an inch longer. Which to make up for that, there's one more thing we had to cover before we like start closing out. Is deep strikes did change to 8 inches. I'd be curious to see what they do to 6 inch deep strikes. They moved them to 8 inches so that you're setting up 8.1 away. You still keep your 9 inch charge. They didn't want deep strikes to go to 10 inch charges. That would be kind of obscene. Um, and 6 inch charges probably going to 7 inch charges, which honestly, I'm fine with that.
Yeah.
I
Any
six
of
inch
the
charge
6 inch deep strike and charge mechanics, they were always
very
brutal.
they were very easy to like they're prone to getting toxic a little bit, right? Not I would say not really many armies like got away with super toxic combos. I'd say like Grey Knights are maybe the worst, but like I'm not going to bash Grey Knights right now. What am I doing?
No.
But there's been periods of time where 6-inch charges have been a little toxic, like when Death Guard was at its height and Death Shroud Terminators were like 30 points cheaper, and you just saw 3x3 Death Shroud Terminators in every list, and you're just getting jammed by 9 Terminators in one turn, right? The only reason why you don't see 3x3 Terminators right now is because they cost 1,000,000 points. Why? Because they can 6-inch Deep Strike. So seeing that change go to 7 means Death Guard players are probably going to think about it. They're still going to try the 7, but the failure point for them is going to go up, which would be nice for the people who don't have 6-inch Deep Strikes. But all that being said, fight phase, charge phase. Josie, how you feeling?
I'm feeling positive about it. I do feel like they've gone through and they've looked at this edition and they've said, okay, what are people really disliking? What is stuff that is just a feels bad? And it feels like that they've had a look at all of those and actually tried to fix them. Whether or not they'll work, will time will tell. But the point is that they're trying, and it's really good to see that GW seem to be actually paying attention to what is a problem in the game and trying to make it better.
I agree.
I think the fight phase stuff is great. There is going to be some new spice. There always will be some new spice that comes out, but right now it's looking like a lot of fun.
Yeah, I agree. And they're not going to get it right. They're going to have some rules written weird that we are inevitably going to try to take advantage of because the Warhammer community can't be trusted or can't be
No,
trusted to read, period. Um, I'm excited. I am ready for something new. I missed some of the parts of ninth edition that they are bringing back. The multiple detachments will be nice for list building. I really hope that the Berserker Warband supremacy potentially gets challenged by that. If Warband is 2 points, that would be absurd if they just let the best attachment in the World Leaders Code execute more rules. If it is, so be it. I'll take it and run with it. But I'm more excited for the implications for the other detachments. Um, oh, I forgot to mention with the 8-inch Deep Strike, you do get to like potentially auto Blood Surge out of reserves with Invocatus, right? If you Deep Strike, I mean Invoc it doesn't have to be with Invo, but like that's the most obvious one. Berserker Warband, you have the auto 8 Surge. Engagement range is 2 inches. That's sick, right? There's a lot of cool stuff, and like we're probably missing a few cool combos here. So like, feel free to express your excitement in the Discord. Please check us out down below. We have a Discord, we have a Patreon. We're going to be doing a lot of workshops going into the edition. There's going to be a lot to learn, both from you guys and from us. And Josie and I, in particular, have a lot to learn very quickly. So it is in our interests to master this stuff as fast as we possibly can. So please feel free to check us out there. It means a lot to us. A coffee a month basically allows us to go out and do the things that we need to help you guys get the best experience you can with this army. But broadly, I'd say we're excited as a channel. All these changes, they're different, they're scary, they're new. That doesn't necessarily mean it's a bad thing. Being different isn't bad. It could be bad. It could be better. We don't know until we try it. That's kind of my takeaway here. Um, and I'm excited.
it's a hype time. It always is. An edition change should always be a time for excitement for people. I know some people really struggle with change in general. New editions can be scary, but oh my gosh, is it going to be fun learning it again? I think people forget how much fun they have learning a new thing sometimes. And a new edition is, especially an edition like this, it's not going to change too much. It's going to feel familiar, and it's going to change just enough to get a lot of excitement back into your games.
Yeah, and like we have 6 detachments right now as world leaders. It's not that much. And we're potentially getting 2 to 3 to maybe 4 if we're lucky, more detachments to like help spice that stuff up. It is going to get spicy, right? Like it inevitably is going to get spicy because at worst, it is going to get better, right? Like we're not going to get another Vessels of Wrath situation where, yeah, Vessels of Wrath is just kind of like that one detachment in the corner that we kind of forgot existed and we put it there and we just pat it on the head and let it acknowledge it as the sixth world leader detachment, right? But if Gortrak or Khorne Demonkin or Cult of Blood are 2 detachment points, they're just going to get better by adding other detachments to them,
Yeah.
which means we're only going up from where we are right now. And it's not like they're going to release a dead detachment. Um, like most of the orc detachments, people aren't really that hyped about. I'm just going to call that out real quick. Those are just straight up dead detachments, right? That's not going to be the case with this. This is going to even if these 1 pointers are weak, they will be upgrades to what we already have. So I am excited for that. I'm excited to see what they have. Maybe we get an Angron detachment. I'd be excited if we got an Angron one pointer. Maybe that's
He
how they
deserves
fix
something.
him.
He needs something. The
He
man
needs
needs.
something.
He needs help.
So. With that, everybody, I'll leave it there. Thanks for sticking around. This has been a little bit of a long one. It's been just kind of a rant, but it's definitely like good for Josie and I. We both wanted to kind of get our thoughts out there. We haven't really had a chance to talk about 11th between ourselves even, because we've just been so focused on the WTC grind. But here we are. We're excited. 11th is coming. Stay healthy, stay safe, and kill, maim, burn.